Faith, so you can go ahead and record. Thank you. Welcome, everyone. My name is Amy Starcheski. I serve currently as the president of the Oral History Association, and I also direct the Oral History Master of Arts program, and I have the privilege of supporting the Oral History Association's NEH fellowships, through which we've been able to support 11 incredible oral historians to have a year of their lives to develop themselves and their work and their careers in oral history as a step towards transforming our field. So I want to especially welcome our NEH fellows. Part of that program is that we have funding to offer a series of public training workshops, and the trainers from those workshops will then be doing some one-on-one advising and consulting for our fellows. And so this is the second workshop in that series. And I'd like to welcome Mijan Selitho-Baez to teach us today and share her wisdom with us. I'll give a little bit of a more formal bio in a minute, but I want to just start by really shouting out Mijan as a person who's taught me a lot about how to take care of oneself in doing oral history work in a really deep, not bubble baths and pedicures, but really thinking about how oral history work can nourish us, and how we can not be martyrs, but be, I don't know how to put this quite, she'll probably put it better than me, but how as oral historians we can take care of ourselves as much as we strive to take care of our narrators, and as part of the work of taking care of our narrators. And so I'm really grateful to have her here today to be teaching us some of her accomplishments. She's a Kennedy Center citizen artist, a documentarian, and a cultural producer. She's really been a leader in bridging the fields of oral history and storytelling and education and the arts. She designed and led the Steinem Initiative's public policy digital storytelling pilot at Smith College. She's been a visiting scholar at Columbia and NYU. She's a BMW Foundation Responsible Leader. She's also a public speaker, as we'll see today, in places from Carnegie Hall to the Institute of American Indian Arts to South by Southwest. And so we're very grateful to have her speaking with us today. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mijan.
I started tearing up already. I'm super excited to be here today talking about how I built my career and what I turn to again and again that sustains it. I want to say thank you to Amy for making the invitation. I'm going to say a little bit about like how we came to meet each other, know each other, and that relationship and the importance, especially like in the container of how I built this body of work and career. I also want to say thanks, obviously, to our two ASL interpreters, Ryan and Trisha. I really appreciate making this talk accessible as possible. And I'm going to go right on into, and of course, thanks for everybody. It looks like 64 people who showed up. This is so wonderful. I am going to do my best to speak a bit slowly, just being mindful for anyone who may have English as a different language. And then, of course, for the interpretation process. That said, I'm going to go right into my talk. And I just want to share, if possible, I'm so sorry about that, share screen. Gosh. Okay, so I am going to talk about this career of mine, yes, but I'm going to talk about how it began, namely with my parents. I'm like, you can't even see, but I'm the little head on the left side down at the bottom. Maybe you see an ear, you see 2 plates of food. Both of my parents, I always say I grew up in an editing booth. That's how I came to the work of oral history. Because my dad was a mainstream host for NBC radio, and also a producer for NBC Radio and for Fox Television. He always says before he knew what Fox was really about. And then my mom was at NBC as well. And so this was, as you can tell from the fashion, late 70s, and their careers, my mom spanned through, I think, early 90s. My dad dipped in and out. But it was an interesting time to, I think, witness with a front row seat what it was like to be a Black story maker. In a traditional mainstream space, it meant that they were the only people in the building who looked like themselves, except for the folks who were cleaning the buildings. It also meant that they really, doubled down in the belief that they had to work twice as hard as everybody else to stay in their positions. And so when I say I grew up in an editing booth, I really mean like I would go to their work after school and stay until midnight so they could make deadline. So it put a different taste in my mouth. It's ironic that I followed their path because I said growing up I would never do what they did. But that said, I did follow obviously in their footsteps, but I made it my own. So then fast forward, I would say to grad school. I had all these jobs where I was interviewing people as an educator, ironically, but a community-based educator, as a social worker. And so I just recognized when I was in grad school, I needed a great qualitative research method that would fit me as much as would be meaningful to the research. And thank God I had, well, not thank God, I had 3 different dissertation chairs because they kept retiring. But when I got to the final one, she said, you know what, if you're right-handed, I don't want to see you go up to bat with your left. You come from story people, you've been doing story work. I want to see you do a qualitative research method that is story embedded. That's the foundation. And I went to University of San Francisco for my master's and doc degrees. And she said, there's this organization right up the road called Voice of Witness. And they do these summer intensives. And I think you should reach out to them, if nothing else, just to see what else is out there, but maybe actually do their intensive. And so it like made me a little teary when I saw that Cliff was the person who kicked off this workshop series, apparently, and he's the person who taught me, Cliff and Claire. And it was a 1-week intensive all day. It was a lot on oral history. It was phenomenal. And then I came out of it though saying, I'm not quite sure how to marry this with qualitative research. I don't understand what part is folk art, perhaps what part is qualitative research, how to do it ethically, what are the ethics dependent on the circumstances. And I remember doing a Google search and Groundswell, Oral Historians for Social Change popped up, and Amy Starczewski popped up, and there was a practitioner support network call that popped up every month. And I was like, done, signed up. And I showed up every single month, and every single month, Amy would mentor me. I would be like, I don't know what I'm doing. Please, I'm afraid. I need to graduate. They're sending me love letters telling me I've taken too long. Please help me. And she did for an entire year without pay, without my academic affiliation. My department has no oral historians, so they really couldn't guide me. And that's how I came to this work. The funkiness was that as I was finishing my doc degree, I was also being recruited and candidating for an executive director position of a media education arts organization in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And they said yes, I said yes, and I started literally the month that my edits were due after I defended my dissertation. Like it was all at the same time, really bad timing. I did it. However, I have to say it was one of obviously the more stressful work situations, but also one of the best. I refined grant writing. I learned how to put together collaborations with academic institutions, museums, cultural organizations, poet laureates, everybody who really wanted their hands on young people's engagement, public radio, and in-person events turned to this organization. So it was a perfect primer. It definitely was trial by fire. I wouldn't recommend it without, I think, a bit more support. That said, it set me up. I am now in my 6th year of not just having a consulting practice, but a full-on business with employees, and a fancy entertainment attorney and an agent. And it wouldn't have happened, I don't think, if I didn't have the family lineage combined with that very first executive director position that required me to do everything. And so now, fast forward, I came out of that experience saying, I think that we can do better as oral historians by ourselves. Partially because I just had burnout after burnout after burnout. And I thought it was all going to end after I was an executive director. And surprise, surprise, no, that didn't happen. I was like, well, now I'm the boss and it's me and there's no board and there are no funders and da-da-da. Wrong, 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 wrong. That said, and so now I'll go to the next slide, it's how I came to understand this ecosystem. Oh, I wonder, maybe I should sort of do that. This ecosystem of ways that I can resource myself while I'm doing this resourceful work in community. And for me, and this is what I'm sharing about the nitty-gritty, it's really residencies, fellowships, and cohorts of practice. I'll make myself a little bit more visible in a second, but what I've sorted out is that I was getting resentful about showing up and giving it my all and pouring myself into every beautiful project and making them sing, and then feeling very depleted on the flip side. But then that's when you're supposed to get the next project, or somehow you're supposed to be working 2 projects at the same time. The building of the practice really was tiring. It was really tiring. And I just thought there's gotta be a better way. So I would say the moment, there's 2 key times in my career that shifted things. One, when I went into my very first residency while I was in grad school, before I even graduated, I was going back and forth, home base, I'm everywhere. That's the running joke, I'm everywhere, I travel a lot. However, home base is Santa Fe, New Mexico. And I was still in school in San Francisco. And so I had to fly back and forth. And I just kept feeling, after coming back from a semester of research in Brazil, that the linearity that sometimes happens in academia as opposed to community-based settings and story projects in particular, it just didn't suit me as far as where I was doing the design and the thinking up of the oral history project. And I wondered if I was going to tell the story, and I decided, yes, I am. I was in the library. It's after Brazil. I'm in the Mission District of San Francisco. I've got 2 kids because I have been a single parent for 15, 16 years, something like that. My kids are entertained in the public library. I can research stuff. You know, it's like a perfect place. I love libraries. I'm a grandchild of a librarian. And I was on the computer and I was hustling my eyes because there was this really cute lady next to me. I loved her outfit, everything. And I was like, wait a minute. We were in Brazil at the same, because I'm looking at her resume. I'm like, we're in Brazil at the exact same time. And like, I'm looking at who she did research with, and it literally overlapped with all of my people. And I was like, wait, we're sitting next to each other in San Francisco, but we were both in Brazil, what? And I just struck up a conversation and I was like, what are you doing here? And how did that go? And she was like, hey, you know, so I work at this place called the Red Poppy Art House. you should come by. We have performances. It's like one of the best performance spaces in San Francisco. We do residencies. And I was like, residencies? What does that mean? Because I only was familiar with like a medical doctor doing a residency, not artist residencies. And she said, oh, it's this really cool thing. So a bunch of artists and researchers and sometimes educators and sometimes policymakers, like they come together and they do their own practice, but we have monthly salons and we all support each other in each other's work. We show up to each other's events and God, the Poppy, it just has all these beautiful people. You're totally going to find like your next boyfriend, girlfriend, crush, lover, whatever. It's a great space to like try out new creative professional things. And I was like, this sounds like magic. Wow. Okay. And she said, you know what? Why don't you come by and I will introduce you. This is like the story of my life. I'll introduce you to the founder director. And I was like, that sounds great. And so she did. And it was my very first artist residency, non-residential. It's a storefront performance space in the Mission District. It was a place where I could work for free. San Francisco, like New York, like LA, expensive rent. So to try to rent out space and have oral history recordings was like, the library was not going to be accessible. An office at an academic institution is pretty sterile. And so it just gave me a home. It gave me a creative, professional home with a new cast of supportive, warm, kind, creative characters. And it began the seed because there was no limit. Like Todd Thomas Brown is his name, and he is a very dear friend to this day. I said, you know what, because then I started Googling. I'm like, well, what typically are artist residencies? What should I say? You know, how should I behave? And when does this end? And he was like, no. Like once you're part of the community, you will be in dialogue. However, we'd love to see you bridge these communities together. And it was the first person, no, I take that back. Brazil was very strong with that too. However, it was the first person in the United States to say, how do we marry? How do we get what you're doing over here when you're saying you're an academic, but you're using this folk art method and practice with what we're doing here? And oh, right, your participant narrators are all in this community, the ones that are in California. And I was like, okay, I want to figure it out. So that's how I came to residencies. What I want to say though, before I skip on and do a deeper dive and give like a 1, 2, 3 about thinking about them, which there's Lillian Rivera, prolific author. She wrote the very first Latinx character for Star Wars. And we did a Room of Her Own foundation together. I don't think it's going anymore, but it was every other year in Georgia O'Keeffe area of the world, Abiquiu, New Mexico. Yeah, I wrote my entire residencies. So you can do all kinds of work in residencies, including research work, writing work. And I did my entire chapter 3 in that 1 7-day span in Abiquiu, New Mexico. Why? Because somebody cooked for me. I didn't have to clean. I didn't have kids. I had no regular responsibilities. And I was surrounded by 50 or so other women, femme, non-binary writers who all were about the business of also writing, and every meal talking about the writing. And so just a deep dive. What I want to go backtrack and say though, before I get into each distilled piece of the residencies, the fellowships, and the cohorts of practice, is that where I am in my career now, I want to be transparent. Everything that I'm talking about here helped me get to here. I'll say where here is in a second. However, I also believe deeply in my heart powers me going into this next phase of development with my business and also my practice. I think that's important to say, because some things aren't, like, I can't carry them forward. What got me here aren't all the things that keep evolving one's practice and scaling and growing one's business. So that said, what I want to say about the here is that it's a lovely place. In this last, 9 months, the projects that I've been doing, I kicked off Kennedy Center, their 50th anniversary week with a residency through their social impact division, collecting the stories publicly. I love it when I can do oral history interviews publicly. Collecting the stories of 15 or so BIPOC creatives who all have thriving practices in North America. I also had the opportunity to serve as the chief curator and host, interviewing Van Jones and Maria Teresa Kumar for Unfinished Network. It's a joint venture of some of the largest philanthropic foundations and think tanks and policy institutes, and Georgetown is also part of it. It's like 20 plus organizations, all on the theme of multiracial democracy. And so it gave me another opportunity to use oral history methodologies as a host interviewer. I'm a very different kind of interviewer. I'm not a journalist interviewer, but I'm also, in my practice, I realize now, not a pure traditional oral history interviewer. I meld things together. I don't, because of where I came from, I don't know how to anymore make things discreet. I started off blending, a folk art practice with a qualitative research methodology, and I just keep remixing from there. And then where I'm headed and where I am right now, I am doing a beautiful project that I am so immensely grateful, proud, and excited by with Policy Institute and National Policy Institute, all on the theme of liberation. And it's 30 or more oral histories that I'm collecting with Black, Indigenous, API, and Latinx peoples of California that I then will have edited down. I do not do the editing though, talking about capacity, but I'll have them edited down, a few of them, and amplified through civic engagement programs that I curate, as well as public art, community accessible projects up and down the state. It's a big undertaking. I think it's the largest scaled project that I probably have ever led, designed, envisioned, and activated. So that's what's the stuff that's got me going. I'm at Harvard at the end of the month teaching a story, how I do this kind of story, but more so like how to loosen up with it, because I realize that that's a thing. Okay, that's all about the here and now for me in my practice. It frames why residencies are important. So I'm gonna try, let's see, I think I'm gonna pause my share so I can start looking at chats. I wanna know what people think in the chat, what they think artist residencies are, and what they think that they can be in their practice. So 2 questions. What are artist residencies, and what do you think that they are in a practice, in your practice, in one's practice? And also, anybody in the chat, has anyone done an artist residency? I just want to know those things. Take a little second here. And while you're dropping it in the chat, hopefully, I want to say that you already know my story with residencies and how I came to them. The amazing person who was sitting next to me in the library, and then being introduced, and it being a very inclusive artist residency program. But I want to say what I believe residencies to be and what they've been in my career, and why I think they're important for other oral historians and humanities professionals. I believe that they are, and I turn to them again and again. I believe that they are the space that you can creatively explore. You can get a deep dive of work done. Like I talked about, just 1 week of not having to cook or clean and being around other writers, getting an entire dissertation chapter done that had minimal revisions needed. Like, it taught me this is what focused work can produce. So I see them as research, writing, and creative production labs. And I also, very, very, very important, I see them as natural relationship weavers between peoples and communities. And I'll give you an example. For this California project, actually, I have a California residency, not overlapping with the project, but because it is, and they said it's okay for me to say, I'm an invited visiting artist with 18th Street Arts in Santa Monica, California. They give you your own little, loft house and space. Judy Chicago was one of the founders of this residency. And I just actually dropped them an email and I said, you know what? With this, even though we're not overlapping in the time of the project, because this California project is done by the end of this year, could you make some introductions? I've got these narrators that I've got to come up with a very long list, not just who actually gets interviewed, but a long list of community collaborators, a long list of press outlets, a long list of potential public event spaces. And I'm like, oh my God. And I was talking to a friend like, I'm super connected in the Bay Area because that's where I lived and I worked and I went to school and I got my, feet underneath me as an oral historian, but I'm a little confused about what to do about LA and, further south. And they were like, wait, didn't you get this residency? Why aren't you talking to them? Sorted with a bow on it. So residencies, for the community-based ones, what I have found, they love to make introductions. They love to be matchmakers. And generally speaking, one of the biggest values, I think, of being a good residency program is being a phenomenal host. So, I see some answers here in the chat. Teaching artist residencies. Yes, Tammy. Gail, I see. Oh, you were at an academic center. Okay. So there are different places that you can be embedded. There are different places that offer traditional and non-traditional artist residencies or residencies at large. What I want to say as takeaways for you for your next steps is to consider a few questions, just 3. If you're curious about residencies, ask yourself, do you need time and space away from your regular, whatever your regular is? Maybe it's elder care, maybe it's being a partner to someone who has some significant needs. Maybe it's just a heavy workload, whatever it might be. And then maybe it's just you, but you just need a different change of space and pace. Ask yourself, 1, do I need to crank out some work undisturbed? 2, do you want to build professional and friendly relationships with other fill in the blank creatives, researchers, policymakers, documentarians, academics? Those are typically the folks who come to residencies that are multidisciplinary or interdisciplinary. The third question, do you just need time and space to reflect and recalibrate your life? And that's a new question for me that came up this past year because I did almost a 2-month residency in Oaxaca in March and April. Residency is phenomenal. I cannot recommend it high. Yeah, it's just phenomenal. I can't over recommend it. It's called Poco a Poco. And I didn't recognize that I would be able to design. I designed the California project. I designed the salon with Van Jones and Maria Teresa there. I designed a whole other project that is coming up. And I also learned just because there's this baked in schedule, and it's one of those lovely hosted residencies where all of the cooking happens. And you don't, it's like, just they take care of everything for you, including picking you up from the airport. The day started at 8 o'clock with a morning hike. We'd get back in time. 9 a.m. was breakfast. From 9 to 10 with the chef in residence, Aurelia, who is chef's kiss. She's incredible. And then you would hit the road with studio time from 10 to 3. And I mean, super focused, but there's something about the synergy of creatives of different practices and translators. I forgot to mention that too, because one of my besties from the residency, Nani, is a translator. And so to be in a large studio space room, and also just to be outside in the patios and the decks, creating your own focused work, but together in space, for me, facilitates A, focused work, and B, creative cross-training. To pause and take a break and say, hey, what are you working on? Oh, how do you approach that? Oh my God, I'm having this problem. What would you do as a translator? Or what would you do as a weaver? Or how would you make this project as a singer? Like, how can it be embodied? And to get real-time advice and try it out. There are very few spaces, I have to say, that I found in my work practice that provide that. And then to have the day end, or at least mostly at 3 o'clock with, I never figured it out. Was it lunch? Was it dinner? Who knows? But it was my last meal of the day because it's so heavy. And then to just have maybe an hour, but you didn't want to miss anything. So you would say to yourself, okay, an hour, focused work, finish every email, finish everything, because we're all going to go out. And then you start the day over again the next day. So I personally came to that third question. Do I, or do you, need time and space to reflect and recalibrate your life? I needed that desperately in this pandemic because things got squishy working at home. I mean, I work in my office now, but yeah, I didn't understand how to bring back rituals and beloved time into my life and into my work. So yes, Allison, it was incredible. And I asked for permission. I said, I'm doing this talk. Can I make a recommendation? Because the last round of applicants, I think it was, I'm making this up. It might've been like June 1st or June 15th. And so then that lets me know that the next round, and they do short-term sort of intensives of 10-day, but it's for clay, for pottery. But if you want just your own self-directed residency time of a month and a half, I think the deadlines are winter and summer. So check them out, please. And thank you. They are some of the best, I have to say. How do you find residencies? I'm going to drop it in the chat. However, I want you to take a look, and as you're reviewing, ask yourself, what's your timeline? How far away can you go? Like, so that's the geography, but for how long? Do you only have 2 weeks? Okay, there are residencies for 2 weeks. Do you only have a week? There are residencies for a week. Do you need it to be virtual? I did a virtual residency. I'm going to talk about it in another moment here. That was out of this world. So well resourced, phenomenal. At a moment in my career that I needed it the most, which was that summer. Who would have known? That summer of 2020, with all of the uprisings. It's like actually making me a little teary right now. that I would need to be with an international cohort of BIPOC folks. Not everybody was BIPOC, of all what I call futurist and folk artists blended together. I'll get to that in a second, but first, your next steps after you ask yourself those 3 questions is to begin reviewing residencies based on those answers and look at the timeline, look at the geography, and look at the money. Do you have to pay? Is it free? Or are they going to pay you? I've done residencies where they pay me. I've done a few residencies, they pay me. Do you get rich off of it? No, but a few $1,000s. And the goal I've recognized now is so that transportation is not a financial burden for folks who are parents or provide elder care, so that someone can come on in and take care, you know, of the responsibilities that you'll be stepping away from. And also because, hello, in a capitalist society, like we've got to make money. So there's that. After you start reviewing based on that, these are places I invite you to. I'm making no like hard and fast recommendation. I'm just saying that they're clearinghouses. So Artist Communities Alliance, those are residencies in the United States. And then international, there's Res Arts and there's Trans Artist. I will drop in the chat towards the end when we're in the Q&A portion. So don't worry. And I'm gonna repeat, it's Res Artist, it's Trans Artist, and it's Artist Communities Alliance. So decipher, is it going to be domestic for you in the United States, or is it going to be international, or both? I also strongly encourage turning to listservs. Listservs like Creative Capital, they make an announcement about residencies, I think in a monthly newsletter. I also would recommend your discipline. So many of us are oral historians. There's a possibility that we're oral historians and something else. If there's a creative something else, get on those listservs. So like for me in my beginning, I would say 2 or 3 years, I was on listservs for writers. And for whatever reasons, they consistently, because their residencies are under the umbrella of opportunities, right? Sometimes funding, but resourcing in terms of time and cohort making. And then also my other next step that I would recommend you take, ask your friends, your colleagues, and your mentors for recommendations and be very specific with the request of recommendations. You want to know not just which ones that they recommend, but at what stage in their career, what did they like and or did not like, that they would say you could just skip this. Overall, great, but this one thing. And then I think a final really good question is, what do they believe may be a good match for you, where you are in your career stage and where you're headed and why you're turning to residencies. I want to say one last big shout out for anyone who is a parent. And I've got to shout out Diane Karp. She's a mentor, she's a friend, and she's a pioneer. She's retired now. She was the executive director of the Santa Fe Art Institute. And she created not just a family artist residency program, but a complimentary summer art camp for kids. Because like, okay, great, you can bring your kids to this residency program in the summer, but then they're bored out of their minds and they're nagging you. They don't want to be there. You all of a sudden don't want to be there. You're not getting work done. You're not able to relationship build, but like, wow, what a priceless idea, of course, from a mom, from a grandma, i.e. Diane Karp. How about we do a summer art camp for the kids? I never even got a Santa Fe Art Institute residency, but I did send my kids, because I live in Santa Fe, I sent I sent my daughter to summer art camp, and it was low cost. It was phenomenal. It was like circus arts and poetry and writing and all the things, low cost. So I put that out there to say there are family artist residency programs. You typically are going to find them when? In the summer. So I would say in your planning, look for them summer and fall so that you can get it into the queue of your applications. And then what else do I want to say? Other takeaway, create a spreadsheet. This is how I organize my stuff. Create a spreadsheet. You want to drop in the spreadsheet a column for opportunities. So starting with the residencies, and we're going to keep moving along in a second here. You want to know what are the dates, the key dates. So not just when the application is due, but also when they will let you know. Because as you start getting, this down as part of your practice of resourcing your work, you're going to get a lot of yeses. You're going to get some no's too. You're going to get a lot of yeses. And you want to figure out, like, did I apply for more than what I can actually take on? Is there a prioritization here? Like, how is this all going? So you want to get those key dates down. You want to also know, do they need letters of recommendation? And if so, my strong advice, Amy knows this. Amy, every award, I think, maybe not every, but probably just about, Amy has been one of my strong, steadfast recommenders. And Amy can attest, I do not run up on this woman like 2 days before it's due. In my spreadsheet, I already know, like, okay, this one is coming up. We've already got, she wrote a weep, crying, ugly cry worthy letter of nomination and recommendation for me that I just saw recently. And and I was like, oh, this is why you never give your recommenders the short end of the stick by saying, like, hey, there's this thing that's due in 2 days. Can you write a letter? No, what I do, and I'm happy to share the resource, is I prepare a letter of recommendation worksheet where I detail, this is where we met. This is how long we've known each other. It is in this capacity. You've watched this, and this in my career. I would love for you, for this particular opportunity, to highlight X, Y, and Z. So you give them everything that they need, all of the meat and the skeleton, to flesh it out and make the body of the letter, as opposed to just being like, good luck to us both. Hopefully write something great. Put a bow on it. Like, that's not the best of strategies. And it's also, I have learned, not the kindest way to be to myself, and also not the kindest way to be to my recommender. I want to be generous, even in my request, by giving the materials and also by giving them an abundance of time to turn it around. It's what I ask for as well for everybody who I nominate and recommend. So you've got that down in your spreadsheet. That was long-winded, but you get it. You also want to know what and if they need work samples. You want to know the cost, or if it's a fellowship. Put all of this into your spreadsheet. And then the last step is, I would say, reach out to your recommenders right now. Without even having anything on your spreadsheet, just reach out to them literally. We are going to end this in exactly 44 minutes. I want 45 minutes from now, I am encouraging every single person who's attending to send a note to at least one person, but hopefully two, who know your work, they know you, and the very important thing that just gave me chills, they believe in you. They believe in you to the high heavens. They want to see you succeed with everything. And this would be an honor for them. You're going to send them a note in 44 minutes, and you're going to say, hey, I just did this workshop, and I decided I'm applying to more residencies, or I'm applying to residencies for the first time, whatever it is for you. And I want to know your turnaround time, and if you'd be agreeable to writing a letter on my behalf. That's it. That's your very first step. You've got your clearinghouses, the 3 of where you can find residencies, you're making a spreadsheet, and you're reaching out to your recommenders today. Okay, so now moving on along, and I'll go ahead and share my screen again. Maybe not, yes. We're moving into the land of fellowships. Kennedy Center, Citizen Artist. It's an award and it's a fellowship program. I'm getting teary again. I feel like you could say Mijan's career before Kennedy Center and Mijan's career after Kennedy Center. I've done several fellowships to varying degrees of cash. That said, what I now know, again, this is just me and my practice and my history. I have learned to seek fellowships not with the primary aim of the money. The money is going to get spent. If I had to choose, and I'm a very relationship driven person, so there's that. The money is going to get spent. If I had to choose, or if I actually better, because I believe also get the money. I'm here to say that too. That said, the prioritization of what has the strength, this potency and staying power is going to be long-term relationships. So is the institution explicit about their commitment in creating a long-term relationship between the institution and you? And also, are they great connectors? Do they have receipts of being great connectors? Kennedy Center Citizen Artist Program for me. Yes. What I would also add to it is, in terms of like things to think about as you're reflecting on what fellowships maybe you want to apply to, are they explicit about nominating you for, and internally, like all the gold stars there, internally for other opportunities that resource your work? I would say, as you're considering fellowships, I don't know of a clearinghouse like, like Artist Communities Alliance. I know of listservs. I would say keep your eyes open again as you're on this track now, or reinvigorating it if you've already been on it. The folks who are sharing opportunities around residencies also probably are sharing opportunities around fellowships. I do want to say this one caveat. I used to think, and not even think, my practice was throw it like spaghetti against the wall and whatever sticks, and try to collect as many no's and yeses, but just get yourself out there. And now, because I'm in a different phase of my career, just to be transparent, and I have to be very, very, very mindful of my time. I have more requests on my time than what I can meet. There's this wild thing that happened last year as part of that series of oral histories. It started before Kennedy Center, before me, doing that public oral history series for their 50th anniversary kickoff week. I interviewed I interviewed in the spring someone who became a MacArthur Genius Awardee in the fall. And I was asking personal questions, actually, like I deviated for a second in the oral history interview just for one question. I said, there's this very weird thing that just happened. My Fulbright application got approved. However, I totally got to the semifinalist round. I even interviewed and I didn't make it to the finalist for these three things that are like, if you were going to just say, and not from a surfacey place, but just in terms of like global reach and being resourced and all of that, I said, they're not Fulbrights. And I said, I don't know what to make of this. You have decades of your career. What do you think? And she was like, Mijan, at this stage in your career, you should not be applying to anything unsolicited. this is the time to do two things. So I'm sharing this with you all because I recognize that folks are coming in the emerging as well as seasoned phases of their careers. The deal with fellowships for me and her, you know, in her MacArthur genius wisdom, we didn't know it at the time that she was going to be an awardee last year, but I heard it again from another one who I interviewed last year who she got the Guggenheim this year. So I'm like, I also can pick them. So here was their advice: be strategic. Recognize in your career, are you in a phase, maybe emerging, maybe you're pivoting, where yes, you do the applications for fellowships that are unsolicited, or potentially, are you in the phase where you should not be doing the large open call applications? It doesn't make sense. I think this is where strategy comes into play. That's my advice. The second part to that advice, though, was what was given to me by the Guggenheim awardee and the MacArthur genius. They said, what we'd love to see you do is do your very, 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 very best in your current and upcoming projects. Get the very, 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 very best profiles of these projects and work samples. You will notice that one project leads to the next seamlessly as a consequence. And they're right. And I heard similar advice from my agent, I have to say. So I'm not on team apply for fellowships personally for myself. I mean, maybe there's a strategy behind maybe one or two that I'll apply for in a year. However, in general, this is not where at this stage in my career I spend my time. That said, notice that I'm saying this on the other side of receiving this Kennedy Center Citizen Artist Award and Fellowship. One last tidbit I want to say is your next step. So maybe not a tidbit, but here are your next steps. And I'll stop the share so I can look at you all. And if you have questions, I want to say your steps are, what are you looking for? Are you looking for money? That's okay. Yes, great. I want you to have all the money. My question is, and then what though? So if you're looking for money and you get it from a fellowship, and then what? How does this, in other words, what's your strategy? How is one stair leading to the next stair in an entire staircase? My recommendation is to look for the Kennedy Center's Citizen Artist Fellowships, those kinds that have a wraparound approach. Look at this fellowship program, right? So even though this is a public program, this is very much for sure for the fellows. Not just my understanding, the contract that I signed with Amy is that, or not Amy directly, but that I know is you all also get some one-on-one advising and care. And that's another great, my first professional job was as a social worker in the time of wraparound care. I would say that's another piece of wraparound care in terms of resourcing your careers, your bodies of work. So maybe it's the professional development and cohort building. Figure out in your mind's eye, what are the top two priorities? Is it money, and what? Is it relationship building, and what? Or with who? And then I would say, as you begin getting fellowships, here's some secret sauce. Prepare. When I got that Kennedy Center Award and Fellowship, I said, I want to talk to one of your alum. It was only maybe a 4 or 5 year old program. And I said, I want you to pair me with an alum. And I do this actually with the program I designed. And it's, I think, a smarter thing to do. I said, I want to make the very best use of my time in this programming. And my goal, one of my strong values is in being mutually beneficial relationship. I want to know how I can show up as great as I can, as meaningfully as I can in this larger set of relationships, but I also want to have an understanding of what I might be able to receive. I'm going to trust you at your word that there are so many things that you all are willing to give your fellows and your awardees. And I'm also going to take you at your word that there's a very large arc of time. And so I want to know how to best think about that. And I don't want to ever be in a room with you all having it drop in my lap. I'm a Capricorn, so I'm a planner. You know what I mean? If you haven't already gotten that. I'm real funky, you know, and creative and definite maverick energy, and I'm a planner. I'm a Capricorn. So to that end, they gave me an alum who set me up so well. Shout out to Michelle. And I still stand behind this, and I even do it in residencies as well. So it's a recommendation. I would say it's a recommendation that does double duty. It signals to the organizers and the directors that you are ready and you mean business and you're primed to relationship build. And so there might be a few of you who are saying, well, but what if a fellowship program is brand new? Okay, ask for planning time with the person who created the fellowship, one-on-one. And again, just sort of like with that letter of recommendation approach, it's don't come with, scatteriness, come with your most focused mind and heart. Just saying like, hey, I just really would like to have 20 or 30 minutes on your calendar. I want to know what the expectations are. I'd like to figure out how to approach this. I want to be clear about communication flows and this arc of time and beyond. I've never had one person say absolutely not. In fact, the response has been, wow, great. Give us a second. We got you. So that now I'm going to say, is there, other than a cheer for yes, fellow Capricorns, I'm going to look really quickly to see, are there any questions just yet? Oh, there was, really quickly. Let's double back. Letter of recommendation worksheet in the body of the email. Okay, so here's what I do. I don't know if Columbia or Oral History Association has one, but my university, you should probably still be able to Google it. It's accessible for anybody who lands on the website. They have a letter of recommendation worksheet. And what I do is I used to put it in the body of the email, but if it's a person who I know very, very well, and they always are, I just say, here's the attachment. Let me know if you need it in another format. Okay, let's move now, and I'm going to share screen again. Let's move to, there's the PowerPoint. Let's go ahead and move to our last piece before we go to the Q&A, which is cohorts. So excited about that. Okay, so I got to do another big shout out. Jerry McGrath, met him at the Banff Center, a wonderful, I mean, I can't sing the praises of that place enough in terms of me being a resident and also being in a cohort for a year. I mean, it was like such a generous program. So let me give you the backstory very quickly. Exquisite, if you don't know, Banff, Canada, gorgeous, 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 gorgeous. Okay, food, phenomenal. I have no idea what they're doing during these pandemic times and all that. I'm just talking about before times. And so there was this thing. I was on a listserv. I was on their listserv. And I see this announcement for something called New Fundamentals in the Creative Ecology. And that it was not a fellowship, but it was a program with 2 residencies at Banff, and then this in-between leadership programming. We met every 5 weeks into very discrete small pods. I'm still friends. I actually went to a wedding. Actually, 2 of the residents, you all might have been laughing at me at the beginning when I was talking about the Red Poppy Art House. 2 of my friends in the residency got married. one of the other residents performed the actual ceremony, and Jerry and I were there as attendees. So I feel like that should just tell you kind of, I don't know about Banff at large, but I would say anything that you see Jerry McGrath produce as residency programs, sign up. And I think he might even have a call right now, not through Banff, but through UCI. I'll drop that as a link as well. But so the point is, we met in that program. It was exquisite. I didn't understand really the crux of it was about the cohorts. You just heard me say 2 people got married, a third performed wedding ceremony. Like, it was about relationships, and relationships that nourish and last for good. Fast forward, he leaves Banff. He had been at Banff as a director for 10 years. I was one of the faculty in their cultural leadership program. So I got hired, I got a job out of it too. And then he creates this organization, arts, maybe, I don't know if he calls it arts and culture, but that's how I see it. That's how I experience it. Organization in Toronto, Canada. And pandemic happens, everything has to convert to digital. And so he made a series of resourced digital residencies. We've become buddies through the BMW Responsible Leader Network. And I just keep noticing this guy again and again and again in cohorts as one of the mastermind designers of exquisite cohorts, as one of the voices in some of the rooms that I've been in, advocating for arts, culture, and documentarians. And so I believe what I learned about cohorts, in large part, a lot of it, not all of it, a lot of it though can be attributed to that dude. I trust him beyond. What I want to say, the important thing before we get into your next steps, is that when I look at my body of work, my career, moving from, full-time exempt executive director to a consultant to a business owner who still very much has a robust, active, engaged oral history practice, I would say cohorts were behind it, getting to that point of moving through doctoral degree program and becoming executive director. Cohorts were right in the middle of me being a consultant and beginning freelancer. Cohorts are still with me, and they're going to continue. That would be the thing that I would say there's never been a press pause on, just never. Cohorts are behind your recommenders, my recommenders. Cohorts are the ones who I get to turn to and say, you know what, I'm in this real weird, tacky phase, and I don't know what to do. Who's the next person for me to turn to for guidance, for help, for whatever it is? I guarantee every single time, like, that's the one factor that follows 1,000,000%. And so I would just say, I invite you to turn to cohorts as your ecosystem of right-sized relationships for your hybrid career and for romancing one's own life, right? Like, you've heard the residency part, you've heard how people in my cohort got married. And what I mean by romancing one's life, I mean like living a life that is infused and centers joy and well-being, not just for your practice, not just for the communities you work with, but also turning to again and again as a touch point, as a flashpoint, as a baseline of how you can have a sweet life, not just a sweet practice that other people get to receive. The goal is that it's not an either or, it's for all of us, including ourselves. So cohorts have been that for me. They've gotten me now that I think about it, even this current, is that true? That is 100% true. Yep, I'm doing this in real time. Even this California project came to me through a cohort. So I can't sing the praises more Now, if you're looking to make money through cohorts, like directly, explicitly, like I'm going to do this cohort program and they're going to give me $100,000, there are some out there, they're rare. I think the way that I perceive all of the parts of the ecosystem are from a financial permaculture perspective. I look at the social capital. I look at the intellectual capital. I look at the creative capital. I look at the spiritual capital. I look at the health and well-being capital of being in a reciprocal relationship of giving and receiving in the ecosystem. So not just prioritizing or singularly focused on financial capital. All right, next steps. I would say figure out where there are open calls for cohorts. Start targeting organizations that you notice have cohort programming. Get on their list. Show up for their talks here and there, right? One easy, quick sort of cheat is I follow certain people on social media. I don't like social media too much, I have to say. However, I pop in intentionally. And one of the ways that I pop in intentionally is for research. And so I take a look at, like you can see it, me, I always announce I'm going to this residency, or I'm in this residency, or I'm in this cohort, or it just wrapped, and just start to maybe look at practitioners who jive with what you're about and what you like, and check out what they've applied to and received and where they are in their career, right? Knowing that it's either in your midst, you're in the same sort of phase, or it's coming up for you, right? I'm a long-term planner. In addition to being a Capricorn and a planner, I'm a long-term planner. And so after you've gotten on some mailing lists and you're checking out other people and what they're up to, identify some, chat with your mentors, and add these to the opportunities spreadsheets along with your residencies and your fellowships, and let your nominators know. Let your letters of, or the people who are doing your letters of recommendation, so let your recommenders know. That's all that I've got to say about those three things. I'm opening it up for Q&A now. I want to say that you can ask me anything, truly. I think the best way to do it, oh, I'm seeing questions in the chat. Is there anywhere we can learn more about his work? Who is, oh, Jerry, yes, of course. Hi, Google it. He's phenomenal. He's just phenomenal. And it's gonna make him blush that I even did this, but I tell everybody, I ask for consent, like before I do a public talk, and he said yes. And he's Canadian. So just know that he blushes a lot. Very, very humble human being. Ask questions, you all. This is our Q&A time. You do not have to drop it in the chat. I think just popcorn style if you can. Oh, here's one. Alyssa, I don't know if that's how you pronounce your name, but just go ahead and unmute yourself and ask your question.
Hi, yeah, sorry, I was muted because my dog's next to me and she likes to bark, so hopefully she'll stay quiet. So yeah, I wanted to know a little bit more about kind of some good sources to find organizations that have cohorts, just because I don't want to just mindlessly Google, like I don't know if you knew any good tips and tricks to find good organizations for that. So
I can say the caveat for me is I've got one of those minds that works and optimizes for tangential information finding. And so what I do is I start with a cluster. So as an oral historian, like with these large projects, I create a short list. And then from there, I ask them to move me through a chain of trust. That's something they taught us in Voice of Witness. I do the same thing with residencies, as I do with cohorts, as I do with fellowships. once I get them, I ask, hey, where else, you know, this is what I'm up to for the next year or two. What else do you think? Like, that's what I'm about to do with Poco. And that's what I'm doing with 18th Street. Like, where you guys now know my work. Where should I head next in terms of residencies? So for cohorts, because I would say cohorts and residencies, there's something about those two that, I mean, it's implicit. Residencies, this is who you're about to live with. So you really pray that they get the relationship building and the weaving and the hosting very, very well done. With cohorts, same thing. You're supposed, like, literally, you're supposed to be in relationship together. That's the purpose of it. And so what I do, I know that this is more work, and I get that I'm a Capricorn, and this is my jam, and this is the way that my mind works. I look at current cohort members. I look at current fellows. I look at current residents, and I take a look and I say, where else have these people been? I call it follow the leader. Let their track record do the work for you. If you believe, not even if you believe, because I think everybody's time is so precious. If you have talked to a mentor, whether it's a seasoned mentor or a peer mentor, and they say, you know what, I did XYZ, it was outstanding, I think you would be great for it, then I take the time to take a look at, for the last 2 years, who are the people who have done this thing and what have they done? And do I admire it and does it resonate? That's all the research, to be perfectly honest. Like, you will have more than you'll have more data points than you know what to do with. I get that it's not the most linear way, like going to a listserv. However, I would put so much behind that. I don't know what to tell you, because like attracts like. I know that the folks who I've been in cohorts with, if they send me stuff, that's the other good thing too. Then you start sending each other stuff. You say like, ooh, let's apply together. Or, you know what, I'm already booked up here, but I think this would be great for you. Or what I love, especially, you know, I can be transparent. I'm in my 40s. And so the folks who are faculty for residents and cohorts are peers and vice versa. And we start saying like, do you have an emerging mentee that you're thinking about? Can you make sure that you put this on your social media? Is there any way that you could do this in your next newsletter blast? So again, looking at this whole model of opportunities, resourcing your work and being in right relationship, looking at it as an ecosystem, you start to develop a constellation of people who you will start to see again and again and again. You see them pop up. You could look at me. This is what, the 10th residency that I have done this past year. And I'm like, there's a theme to what they are. I do the residencies that either leave me completely alone so I can get some work done. And I know that they cook really well and it's in a beautiful place. Like I do a residency every year, you all, for women in femme. There's a residency called the Juno residency. I think that's what it's called, but it's at Omega Institute, Hudson Valley, beautiful, no cost. You do not cook, you do not clean. One year I counted how many steps from my door at the cottage to the house where they have the body work, because I was like, I'm just getting body work and I'm sitting at the lake. And it's not a production-based residency. They really just want the women and femme leaders and non-binary leaders of the world to have some time of dedicated R&R. Okay, let me see. Is there another question? Can you talk more about how oral history practitioners can best frame their work within arts land? Yes, as documentarians, editors, writers, translators. Those are the things that you notice are resourced in arts land. That's how it lands. I think this is a perfect, wonderful question, because I just actually recently, I got promoted in my agency, and now the founder, one of the co-founders of the agency, is my personal agent. We did this onboarding and she was like, okay, we have to update your bio and da 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 da. And she was like, but why do you keep calling yourself like all these different things? And I said, well, because each contract, like I'm the activator, I'm the curator, I'm the host, I'm the interviewer, I'm the this, that, the other. And she was like, Jesus Christ, like people don't know how to track to hire you because you're like calling yourself so many different things. What is it? What departments typically hire you? And what are the words that resonate that they hire you to do the thing that we all know that you do, that you love to do, that you do well? And I was like, oh, well, I curate and I host and I design. And she was like, done, period. So what I encourage people who are oral historians, who are working in the humanities, look, once you find the residencies that you love, the cohorts of practice that you love, the fellowships that you love, what are they calling their practitioners? Or is it interdisciplinary and they open it up to researchers? They open it up to translators. Look for the key words and then take a moment and ask, what is it that I do in my practice that is identical, but they're calling it a different thing? And then simply use that word, use the word. So you're going to code switch, use the words that they use. I think sometimes we get so caught up, and also use your application, especially if it's, you have to economize your words, but to translate for them, to connect the dots for them. I am an oral historian and my practice does XYZ with XYZ, solving for XYZ. You've made it all apparent to the folks. I'm going to move very quickly to the next question. Talk about choosing projects that bring me joy, yes, and also saying no. How do I do this quickly? I transparent. This stage of my career, I have an entertainment contract attorney. I have an agent. I have a very strong project-minded assistant. And I just made the promise to the new agent who's the co-founder. I said, okay, I will not even volunteer. I will not do anything that is a public program without giving it to her, because she has a rubric and she has my master calendar. Same thing so this is all under the, how do I figure out what I say yes and no to? I meet every year with these people and I say, this is what this year is about. This is where I'm headed. I got gifted a friend who's a phenomenal strategist by trade. That's what she does. She's a political strategist. She advises heads of state. She's on sabbatical for half the year and said, I would like to sit with you and gift you my time. Where do you want to be going in the next 3 to 5 years? Let's map it out and let's look at the calendar. And she literally had page after page of months, like every month had a page for the next 2 years. This woman, her mind, the deep organization. And she was like, and from this time, and it was 12 hours straight, she was like, you've just told me your yeses. You've told me the path of your yeses. And you've also told me your nos. So if you're running low on time, we know that you're not actually respecting and honoring the yeses. The yeses for me. So to that point about Jerry McGrath and his residency and cohort programs, the last residency I did with him, he made me articulate, or not made me, the invitation, the exercise, the activity was articulate your core values that travel with you across everything. If you're going on a date, if you're considering somebody for a partner, if you're taking on commissioned work, if you're in a residency, he's like, they better overlap with these values, because it is just your one life, Mijan, and you deserve to live based off of your values. You deserve to show up in a way based off your values, and you deserve to connect with other people who have similar values. And so that's how I now choose my projects, as well as, though, because of the strategist and being so crystal clear on what I really, really most want to be doing for these 3 years, on the way to what I'm doing for the next, I mean, we've mapped out a decade, to be honest, a vision, not linear, detail. That was the 3 years. That took a lot. Everything is in alignment and service to that vision and those goals and that aim, everything without fail. Is that hard for me? Yes, because all of my training and even my family's lineage is you say yes to everybody who has a need, everybody. Can you imagine how horrible my dating life used to be? Like, I have to say, like, this actually has some fringe benefits to it, because it's like, no, you should not say yes to everybody. Why would you do that? You could be all over the place. So this actually is my year of many more no's, me saying no and vetting it based on my values and my vision, and saying I'm only, I have a dad who I provide some elder care for. He's terminally ill. His years, his days, his weeks are all dwindling. And my time is so valuable that I started to take a look at every time that I said a yes, and it was a yes, but, or can I kind of, or whether it was work, volunteer, whatever it was, it deducts from my bank of time. And so I just had to get very serious and clear and concrete about that and say, shoot, I can't keep going the way that I was. That way was leading to burnout, because I was saying yes to everybody or just about everybody. And that way also will not have me feeling like I'm showing up as a good family member. I'm a woman who dates. I have robust friendships and a creative practice that I'm proud of. And so for me, my yeses this year, like to answer that question with more specificity, is that I said yes to this California project because I said yes to the point person. I said yes to the organization. I said yes to my track of work, committing to the larger policy goal that I believe in and trust. I said yes to this actually functioning as a wonderful case study, a portfolio. Like, there's a part of me that says, I have a portfolio practice. And so this is an important portfolio aspect. So I hope that helps answer that. And then I see another question. As an artist theater maker, what are avenues for connecting with oral historians and folk oral history resources? I feel like that's an Amy question. That's not, I can tell you, yeah, that's an Amy question. There you go, Oral History Association, done. I know we're coming to our time. I feel like maybe, is there one question that I have missed? Oh, there are many questions that I missed. Oops, okay. I can stay a few minutes longer, but I know we're coming to time and I want to respect everybody. I'm going to answer one question. I'm going to share the slide that tells you how you can stay connected. If I have committed, I want to say this, for the next year, I'm making a 1-year commitment, because I knew that I give this talk. What happens after talks is people send me emails. They sign up on social media and newsletter and all the things. And they're like, but I had this one talk. So I'm giving back in a way that I received that literally helps solidify the foundation of my body of work. I'm doing a studio exchange. Consider it open office hours once a month. I'm even bringing in, like, I even asked one of the vice presidents of Policy Link, I said, would you do this with me so that more people understand how to get commissioned projects, right? And not bare bones like, oh, we have $2 and a pack of raggedy Tic Tacs. Can you work for a year for that? Like, no. How do we build abundantly resourced commissioned projects? I asked some of the residency directors who I love, admire, and adore. I'm like, can you come in and jam with me, you know, as I think through and plan and embed residencies? And they've said yes. So I'm like, okay, I'm giving back the thing for free that was given to me for free. So if you have more questions, those are the times to pop up. It'll be 30 minutes. We'll be in, out, done. I'll share that slide in a second. But otherwise, I want you to know, so I see this last question from Tammy, the clearinghouse. I'm dropping it in the chat right now. Artist Communities Alliance. Oh, if I could just spell, goodness. Okay, this is your first one. And remember what I said, that's for the United States. Artist. Yes, please go to the next session as well. I'm gonna drop the last one in. Thank you from Albuquerque. Well, Howard, great from Albuquerque. I hope I meet you at some point. I'm gonna do a real quick screen share so that, what is it? Stay connected. This is how you can stay connected with me. Instagram, I post sometimes once a week. That's the goal. It's always about the projects and the residencies and all that kind of stuff. Sometimes kids stuff too, or my cat, like once a year. But I do this monthly newsletter. You can, through Instagram, it has all the links, right? Like to the next thing that I'm doing as a talk or whatever. And then, like I said, I'm going to do open studio hours where you can bring more questions. Again, this is solely my give back. I don't want to write an op-ed. I don't want to like create, I'm known for like creating these massive things. And it's like, oh, and then who has to do it? Me. So I just said, this is a lighter weight way to return the favor that Amy and also that groundswell community gave to me when I needed it most. So do stay connected. I appreciate this time. And that's all that you're going to hear from me today. I hope everybody has a good rest of their day. I guess I could turn it back to you, Amy.
Thank you so much, Mijan. That was really amazing. So much to work with and really makes me feel excited. So thank you everyone for coming. I put in the chat, the Oral History Association is having an ongoing conversation about our culture and our culture of service and what it means to be part of our field, which relates actually to a lot of what Mijan was talking about today. So we have a visioning session for what we want our organization and our field to feel like, to be a part of next week. So I definitely invite everyone to join. And please just join me in once again thanking Mijan for sharing her wisdom and these resources with us. And if anyone has thoughts about other workshops you'd like to see, please feel free to reach out to me or to the Oral History Association, because we'll have 3 more in the next 8 months or so. Thank you also to our interpreters and to Faith for running this Zoom.
Thank you.